नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी. Hare Krishna. Today we continue Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15. The Pandavas retired timely. Shloka number 33 and 34. पृथा अपि अनुसृत्य धनञ्जय उदितम्
क्रोधापि अनुसृत्य धनञ्जय उदितम्
नाशं यदूनां भगवद्गतिं च ताम्
नाशं यदूनां भगवद्गतिं च ताम्
एक अन्त भक्त्या भगवती अधोक्षजे
एकान्तभक्त्या भगवती अधोक्षजे
निवेशित आत्मा उपरराम संस्कृतेः
निवेशित आत्मा उपर राम संस्कृतेः
यया अहरद् भुवः भारं ताम्
यया अहरत् भुवः भारं ताम्
तनुं विजहौ अजः
तनुं विजहौ अजः
कंटकं कंटकेन इव द्वयम्
कण्टकं कण्टकेन इव द्वयम्
च अपि इषितुः समम्
च पीशितुः समम्
पृथा अपि अनुसृत्य धनञ्जय उदितम्
क्रुधापि अनुसृत्य धनञ्जय उदितम्
नाशं यदूनां भगतिं च ताम्
नाशं यदूनां भगवतीं च ताम्
एकान्तं भक्त्या भगवती अधोक्षजे
एकान्तभक्त्या भगवती अधोक्षजे
निवेशित आत्मा उपरराम संस्कृतेः
निवेशित आत्मा उपर राम संस्कृतेः
यया अहरत् भुवः भारम्
यया अहरद् भुवः भारम्
तां तनुं विजौ अजः विजहौ
ताम्
अजः
ताम् तनुन् विजहौ अजः
कंटकं कंटकेन एव द्वयम्
कण्टकं कण्टकेन एव द्वयम्
च अपि इषितुः समम्
च पीशितुः समम्
पृथा अपि अनुसृत्य धनञ्जय उदितम् नाशं यदूनां भगवद्गतिं च ताम् एकान्तभक्त्या भगवती अधोक्षजे निवे निवेशित आत्मा उपरां संसृते यया अहरत् भुव भारं तां तनुं विजौ अजः कंटकं कंटकेन इव द्वयम् च अपि इषितुः समम्
तथापि अनुसृत्य धनञ्जय उदितं नाशं यदूनां भगवद्गतिं च ताम् एकान्तभक्त्या भगवती अधोक्षजे निवेशित आत्मा उपरराम संसृते यया हरद्भुवः भारं तां तनुं विजहौ अजः कण्टकं कण्टकेनैव द्वयं च पीशितुः समम्
Hare Krishna. Translation and purport by the Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Kunti, after overhearing Arjuna's telling of the end of the Yadu dynasty and disappearance of Lord Krishna, engaged in the devotional service of the transcendental personality of Godhead with full attention and thus gained release from the course of material existence. The supreme unborn Lord Sri Krishna caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller. Purport by the Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The setting of the sun does not mean the end of the sun. It means that the sun is out of our sight. Similarly, the end of the mission of the Lord on a particular planet or universe only means that he is out of our sight. The end of the Yadu dynasty also does not mean that it is annihilated. It disappears along with the Lord out of our sight. As Maharaj Yudhiṣṭhira decided to prepare to go back to Godhead. So also Kunti decided. And thus she fully engaged herself in the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, which guarantees one a passport for going back to Godhead after quitting this present material body. The beginning of devotional service to the Lord is the beginning of spiritualizing the present body, and thus an unalloyed devotee of the Lord loses all material contact in the present body. The abode of the Lord is not a myth, as is thought by the unbelievers or ignorant people, but one cannot reach there by any material means like a Sputnik or space capsule. But one can certainly reach there after leaving this present body, and one must prepare himself to go back to Godhead by practicing devotional service that guarantees a passport for going back to Godhead, and Kunti adopted it. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur suggests that the rishis like Shaunak and others who were hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami at Naimisharanya were not happy to hear about the Yadu's dying in the madness of intoxication. To give them relief from this mental agony, Sutta Goswami assured them that the Lord caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, by which they had to take away the burden of the world. The Lord and his eternal associates appeared on earth to help the administrative demigods in eradicating the burden of the world. He therefore called for some of the confidential demigods to appear in the Yadu family and serve him in his great mission. After the mission was fulfilled, the demigods, by the will of the Lord, gave up their corporeal bodies by fighting amongst themselves in the madness of intoxication. The demigods are accustomed to drink the somrasa beverage, and therefore the drinking of wine and intoxication are not unknown to them. Sometimes they were put into trouble for indulging in intoxication. Once the sons of Kuvera fell in the wrath of Narada for being intoxicated, but afterwards they regained their original form by the grace of the Lord Sri Krishna. We shall find this story in the 10th canto. For the Supreme Lord, both the Asuras and the demigods are equal, but the demigods are obedient to the Lord, whereas the Asuras are not. Therefore, the example of picking out of a thorn by another thorn is quite befitting. One thorn which causes pin pricks on the leg of the Lord is certainly disturbing to the Lord, and the other thorn which makes out the disturbing elements certainly gives service to the Lord. So, although every living being is a part and parcel of the Lord, still one who is a pinprick to the Lord is called as Asura, and one who is voluntary servitor of the Lord is called a Devta or demigods. In material world, the Devtas and Asuras are always contending, and the Devtas are always saved from the hands of the Asuras by the Lord. Both of them are under the control of the Lord. The world is full of two kinds of living beings, and the Lord's mission is always to protect the Devtas and destroy the Asuras whenever there is such a need in the world, and to do good to both of them. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavancha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitancha नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण. We try to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1st, Chapter 15, the Pandavas retired timely, Shloka number 33 and 34. Here they describe about the um, comparing sun setting and Yadu dynasty's disappearance. How they comparing both, they describe about that. And Kunti, when heard from Arjuna the disappearance of Lord Krishna and Yadu dynasty, then she also determined, decide to uh, gain release from the uh, material existence. Then another, uh, and she doing for this practicing, and that devotional practicing is the passport for going back back home, back to Godhead. Then here describe about the Lord Krishna and the mission. Prabhuji will tell us in detail nicely. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji. So, as mentioned by Mataji, this particular shloka is describing the profound spiritual realizations of Kuntī and Yudhiṣṭhira Maharaj, who have heard about the departure of Lord Krishna, destruction of Yadu dynasty. It's highlighting the ultimate surrender to Krishna and the understanding of his divine plan. We are also seeing invaluable insights into transcendental knowledge, detachment, ultimate purpose of life being liberation, moksha. Like this was a month of love, and on 14th, we would have seen many people saying, I cannot live without you, my dear love. तेरे बिना जी नहीं सकता. But the real love is not what we see in the material world. What we see in the material world is just a perverted reflection. The real love is the love between a soul and the super soul, the love between a living being and Krishna. But unfortunately, as soon as we get entangled into the material world, we only hear about lost love. And this is exactly what we understand from Kunti Maharani's example today. She simply overheard. Like Arjuna was not telling to her. Arjuna was speaking to her son, Yudhiṣṭhira Maharaj, and she overheard that the Yadu dynasty has ended and the Lord has disappeared. And she immediately engaged in devotional service of Krishna with full attention. And as a result, she gained release from the course of material existence. So here we also see Sud Goswami ji is informing that Lord Krishna, who is unborn, who is supreme, actually he had caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish the body. And the reason? To relieve the burden of the world. So he says that this action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, because finally both are belonging to same controller, Ishvara. And this was understood by Kunti Maharani. And that is why she thought that now there is no more necessity to remain in the material world. Actually, Kunti's devotion was ekanta bhakti, exclusive, unwavering. She focused her mind entirely on Adokshaja. Adokshaja means one who is beyond the perception of senses. If you all remember, Kunti Maharani in first canto, 8th chapter, 25th verse, she has already made the prayer. Tvai me ananya vishayamati madhumpate sakrata. That may my mind be fixed only on you, O Lord, without devotion, deviation. So actually, this 15th chapter, 33rd shloka is actually showing that she attained that level of pure devotion which she had prayed for in the 8th chapter, 25th verse. This shloka is making us understand the power of exclusive devotion, ekanta bhakti to Lord. By fully surrendering to Krishna, we can transcend material existence and attain eternal liberation. So Kunti's example is actually there to inspire us to cultivate that unwavering faith and devotion to Krishna. Now, one of the examples which comes here is the setting of the sun. Now, when the sun is setting, it does not mean that the sun is ending. It simply means that the sun has become out of our sight. Similarly, the end of the Yadu dynasty does not mean that it is annihilated. It is simply disappearing along with the Lord out of our sight. The end of the mission of the Lord on a particular planet or universe only means he has gone out of the sight. He's still there. So Kunti Maharani immediately decided and she fully engaged herself in transcendental devotional service of Krishna, which guarantees passport for going back to Godhead and quitting the present material body. So Prabhupada in fact says that beginning of devotional service to the Lord is beginning of spiritualizing the present body. And the moment it starts, an unalloyed devotee loses all material contact with the present body and he starts his journey going back to the abode of Lord, which is not a myth. One can certainly reach there after leaving present body. Only what is required is that we must prepare ourselves to go back to Godhead by practicing bhakti. And that guarantees a passport for going back to Godhead. And Kunti Maharani has adopted it. And this proves that it is truly possible. We can go back to Krishna. Krishna, who is Ajara, the unborn Supreme Lord. His activities, including destruction of the Yadus, are not material but divine. But then not many people understand it. Krishna says this in 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita in 9th verse. One who understands my divine birth and activities does not take birth again in the material world. Such a profound statement which Krishna has made in Bhagavad Gita itself when he is explaining everything to Krishna. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma nayeti mameti saha Arjuna. And here, same thing is continuing. Yaya arad bhuvaha bhara. So the Lord who had relieved the burden of the Lord. So Krishna incarnated to relieve the earth of its burden caused by the demons, demoniac rulers, unrighteousness. and his presence restored balance and upheld dharma. Tam tanum vijahau ajah now gave up the body. So after fulfilling his mission, Krishna departed from the earthly realm, giving up his body. This marks the end of his pastimes on earth, but they continue eternally in the spiritual world. Kantakam kantakena eva. So thorn is removed by another thorn. So Yadu dynasty, very powerful. They had become a burden due to their misuse of power. So Krishna utilized the Yadus themselves to destroy themselves. Just like we use thorn to remove another thorn. So this was Krishna's divine plan to restore balance. Dvayam cha pyashituhu sabam. So both were equally under his control. So Yadu dynasty as well as the earth's burden were under Krishna's control. So he orchestrated events for the ultimate good, demonstrating that he is the supreme authority and supreme wisdom. So this shloka highlights that the Lord's supreme control over all events. Even seemingly tragic occurrences like destruction of the Yadu dynasty are part of Krishna's divine plan to maintain cosmic order. So it teaches us to trust in the Lord's will, knowing that He always acts for the highest good. And so we have to work for Krishna. And if we don't work for Krishna, Krishna is not going to care for us. In fact, there is a saying in Hindi, जो नहीं कृष्ण के काम में अ, उनके लिए कृष्ण अपने धाम में और जो है कृष्ण के काम में उनके लिए कृष्ण का धाम है. So if you are engaged in Krishna's work, then Krishna will be there with us. But if you are not doing anything for Krishna, then Krishna will be happy in his own abode. So here Krishna actually gets the Yadus to destroy each other. Now when the sages in Naimisharanya, they heard that the Yadu dynasty is being completely removed, they are not happy to hear about it. Now this is something which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said. And therefore, he says that Sud Goswami ji wanted to give them relief from the mental agony. And that is why he says that the Lord caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, by which they had to take away the burden of the world. Like in the previous shloka, we heard that they fought against each other. But in this shloka, what is mentioned is Lord made them give up their material bodies. So that is the difference which is to be understood. Because just knowing that they have been destroyed, they felt bad. But here it is now clear. Tanum Vijahau. Vijahau means relinquished, and Tanum is body. And Krishna made them do that. Tam. And because of that, he could remove the burden of the world. Krishna's plans are very, very unique. You may not understand immediately, but they are for our good only. Krishna, his associates, they appear on earth to help the demigods in eradicating the burden of world. So, in fact, Krishna had called some confidential demigods to appear in the Yadu family and serve him in the mission. And after the mission was fulfilled, they had to go back by the will of the Lord. And that is why we saw them fighting amongst themselves in madness of intoxication. And Prabhupada ji gives the explanation very nicely how intoxication is bad. Ideally, demigods are accustomed to using somrasa. But drinking of wine and intoxication are not something which are new. But still, the moment they indulge into it, they're put into trouble. And the best example is of Nalaguer, the children of Kuberaha, who had to suffer the anger of Naradji, and they had to lose their original forms and become trees in the courtyard of Krishna. So Krishna, for him everyone is equal, whether it is a Asura or a demigod. But demigods are obedient to Lord, whereas the Asuras are not. And that is why this example of picking up a thorn by another thorn is very, very appropriate. Because here one thorn which is causing pinpricks is the Asuras. And then there is another thorn which is disturbing. But then it is also giving the service to the Lord. So although every living being is part and parcel of Krishna, still one who is a pinprick to the Lord is an Asura, and one who is a voluntary servitor of the Lord is a Devata or a demigod. So in material world, both Devatas and Asuras, they are always having a fight amongst themselves, always competing. But then Devatas are always protected from the hands of the Asuras by Lord. So this world, this is always full of these two kinds of people. And the Lord's mission is always to protect the Devatas and destroy the Asuras whenever there is such a need in the world. And that is why he says in Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi adharmasya glanir bhavati bharata tathatma. He says it. Srujami yaham. Whenever there is going to be a disturbance, he is going to take birth. So what these shlokas are indirectly trying to make us understand are four important aspects of power of exclusive devotion, the understanding of Lord's divine plan, Krishna's supreme control, and how we can get liberation through surrender. So exclusive devotion is actually demonstrated by Kunti Maharani, Ekanta Bhakti. And it is this which enabled her to transcend the material existence and attain liberation. So her example is an inspiration for us to cultivate unwavering faith and surrender. Second is Krishna's divine plan. So the destruction of Yadu dynasty and Krishna's departure were properly planned by his divine arrangement. So it's a reminder for us to trust in Krishna's will, and even when we cannot fully comprehend his actions. Third is control. Krishna has the supreme control. He has to utilize the ability to use the Yadus to remove the earth's burden as well as to remove themselves also. So he is the supreme controller, and all events are under his direction. And fourth is the liberation through surrender. Kunti Maharani, Yudhiṣṭhira, they attain liberation because they surrendered to Krishna. So their journeys teach us that true freedom is in dedicating our lives to the service of Krishna and not otherwise. So these two shlokas, they are offering us profound insights into the nature of devotion, which we need to understand and try to inculcate. You need to cultivate unwavering devotion to Supreme Lord. You have to trust in Krishna's divine plan, even in difficult times. You have to recognize his supreme control over all events and strive for liberation through surrender and service, because Krishna has said this in 18.66. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokṣayishyami ma shuddha. So let us follow the example of Kunti Maharani, of Yudhishthira Maharaj, surrender to Krishna with unwavering devotion and trust, and thus we can attain eternal peace and liberation, returning back to Krishna's eternal abode.